This morning we continue looking at a real man. We're going to talk about a real man plans right. How many of you guys have read Radical and Crazy Love and some of those books? You have to be careful reading anything other than Scripture and taking all of it as fact. Because anytime, especially in Christian books, there's a lot of opinion, a lot of ideas that are out there, and you have to try to figure out why they're saying the things that they're saying. I remember when I was in college, there was a guy, Joshua Harris. Anybody heard the name Joshua Harris? He wrote a book called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Anybody heard of that? Well, this book just took off. Young people, kids in college, everybody's reading I Kissed Dating Goodbye. The whole thing was, don't date anymore, become a Duggar. If you watch the Duggars on television, you know their kids do courtship. They don't date like normal kids. They have to court. Well, the whole thing that Joshua Harris said is you ought to be doing courtships and not dating. And so, hence, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. And then it occurred to me one day how that may really be right for him, but that may not be right for everyone else. Nowhere in Scripture does it say this is how you're supposed to do it. So you do a little digging into his backstory and you find out this guy was a player. He's dating everybody. And so he wrote a book in reaction to himself. You know, and I just thought I was ahead of the curve. I kissed dating goodbye. I never did date. But anyway, it was really more because no one would say yes. But so you have to be careful. Radical and Crazy Love does the same kind of thing. I've met folks who have read those books, and the first thing they want to do is they want to get rid of their 401ks. They want to get rid of all their retirement. They want to sell everything they own, give it all away, and live this radical life for Christ. And that may very well be what God's calling you to do. But it also may very well be what He is not calling you to do. There's nothing wrong with planning for the future. Did you hear me? There's nothing wrong with planning for the future. In fact, I would say the foolish person does not make plans for the future. And the reason why is we're just base it on statistics alone. If for no other reason, you base it on statistics. We all woke up this morning. Can Jesus come back today? Yes. Can He come back tonight while we're all asleep and we don't wake up tomorrow? Absolutely. But if we're playing the numbers game, guess what's probably going to happen tomorrow? You're probably going to get up. So you could sell everything today, and tomorrow you can wake up destitute. Or you can plan for the future. Now, this is where two roads diverge in the wood. There's a difference between making plans and making plans that are right. So today we're going to talk about making the right kind of plans and how you make those plans. And honestly, it may seem just semantics or just words that are the difference, because your plans can be the exact same and one plan be right and the other plan wrong. And so we'll talk about that. James chapter 4 beginning verse 13. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. So he's talking to planners. These are folks who set goals for themselves. And again, if you don't set goals for yourself personally and goals for your family, then you're missing the boat. Someone once said that if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. So we ought to be planning. We ought to have goals. We ought to have dreams and aspirations. And so that's who he's talking to. He says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow. So we got this timetable. This is when I'm going to do it. Come now. Today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city. So you've got, right now is my timetable. I'm going to do it now. And I've got a plan. This is where I'm going. What am I going to do? This is how long I'm going to be there. He says, we'll spend a year there. So that's how long I'm going to be there. I'm going to engage in business. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make a profit. Now, is there anything wrong with any of that? No. No is the answer. There's nothing wrong with having a plan, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go to this place. This is when I'm going to go. This is where I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make a profit. There is nothing wrong with that at all in the world. It is popular now in America to attack those who want to make money. And there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. This is not what this is about at all. He goes on, verse 14, yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. And so the first piece of information that you and I need to have if we're going to be making plans is we need to have a proper perspective of who we are. And that is we're here one moment and we're gone the next. Time is precious. I don't care how much money you make, your most precious commodity is always your time. True? It's your most precious commodity. I was listening to the radio yesterday, I guess it was, and they're having some kind of summit somewhere, I don't know. Anyway, they're at this soccer match. President Obama and Vladimir Putin were at this soccer game, and they spoke to each other on the sideline of the soccer game, and it said that they spoke there for about 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And the commentator talking about this said that is unheard of, to spend that much time talking. And just in case you missed that, they spent 15 minutes standing on the sideline. And the commentator said it is unheard of for the President of the United States to give that much time to any one person. How many of you have gone to the Clinton Library and you looked at his records of his schedule? I mean, we're not talking about... If you guys have ever seen my schedule, you'll see like this morning, study. Just like this huge block. My calendar works in blocks and chunks. The President's calendar works in minutes. These 3 minutes, I'm talking to this person. These 5 minutes, I'm on this phone call. I mean, can you imagine? So he says here, you've got to realize who you are. You've got to realize time's precious. And you're not always here. So we can be so engaged in business, so engaged in our plans, I think that we forget that we have another purpose as well. And we have a purpose to serve God. We have a purpose to bring honor and glory to Him. We have a purpose to be family people. Don and I were talking about that this morning, the danger that our society pushes on men to be so busy that we completely miss out on our families. And we always say the same, well, I'll get around to that, right? I'll get around to it. I'll do that at some point. At some point, I'll slow down. At some point, I'll retire. Mark, Don, Jack, and Barney, they've retired and they're not here. Raymond, you guys have all retired. Did you find that you've slowed down? No, you kick it into high gear. So if we're waiting for that moment to come, guess what? That moment never comes. We're never going to slow down. We're never going to stop until we have to. So he says you need to realize that your life is but a vapor. And that you're here one moment and you're gone the next. And as important as we think we are, there will come a point in time when the world will no longer remember that we ever existed. We'll just be gone. You look at John D. Rockefeller, the richest man who has ever lived. I forget, I looked it up one day. You know, you got the wealthiest guy, either Bill Gates or the guy from Mexico, Slim, worth something like 53 or 54 billion dollars. And I think the numbers that I saw, if Rockefeller were alive today and his money were translated into 2014 dollars, would be worth like 6 times that amount. Can you imagine being worth $300 billion and all the rich folks get together and Rockefeller just looks at Bill Gates and says, oh, that's nice. You've got $50 billion. That's precious. That's a nice little nest egg that you've got there. Well, that's all we remember about John D. Rockefeller. We don't remember anything else. He's gone, dead. His empire, gone. One day, The biggest empire that we've got now is Walmart, probably. Sam Walton did some things early on, business-wise. He made some good plans. And what I mean when I said he made good plans, do you know how many tax dollars they had to pay in estate taxes when Sam Walton died? None. And the reason why is because Sam Walton wasn't the sole owner of Walmart. When his kids were still little, when he was just starting, he made all of his kids 20% owner. So the company continued. Ownership didn't change. But guess what? At some point, all those Waltons are going to be dead. And their grandchildren and grandchildren's grandchildren are going to get farther and farther away from Bentonville. One day, Walmart will exist, but there won't be a Walton to be found. It'll all be gone. One day, they will all be broke, just like the rest of us, because they will get farther and farther away from it. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. We're here today and we're gone tomorrow. And so many of us think more highly of ourselves than we ought to. I see people every day that think they're going to live forever. They never make eternal plans, so they never make any kind of plan at all. So we've got to have a proper understanding of ourselves. But not only do we have to have a proper understanding of ourselves, we also have to have, and more importantly, a proper understanding of God. And if we don't understand who we are, we can never understand who God is. Because we're the simple ones to understand. It's simple for us to understand that we won't always live, right? In the last 3 months, how many of you have gone to a funeral? It's easy for us to realize we're not always going to live. So the next part, he says, instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. If this is God's plan. If this is God's will for my life. How many of you have ever had plans that changed? I mean, you had a game plan. You knew what you were going to do. This is how it was all going to work out. It was all mapped out. And then bam, one moment, right? One instant. And it's all changed. Right? My senior year, we're playing Gosnell. One play. No more football. One play. Guy rolled on my knee. It was done. May 22nd, 2013. One phone call. Everything changed. It's all different. You've got those own stories in your own life. One moment. And all of your plans that you had made really seemed like they were for nothing. So what does he say do? He says that we have to get to the place where we understand who God is. And we say, if the Lord wills. We realize that we're not the major player in this game. It's God. That we're not in charge. It's Him. That we don't decide if the sun comes up tomorrow. It's God. God makes that decision. And so he says, if the Lord wills, notice where he begins with, if the Lord wills, we will live. Now that's the first step to really understanding God, is to realize that God holds the power over your life. There will come a point in time when Thomy Green will take his last breath. And it will be because God has said, that's it. It is over with. There will come a point in time, my dad has said this for years, pay attention, and the second thing he says is, that's a debt that every man's going to pay. Anytime somebody dies, Dad says, that's a debt everybody's going to pay. There's going to come a point in time, Scripture says, it's appointed unto man once to die, and after that the judgment. If the Lord wills, then I'll live and do this or that. So if this is in God's plan, so we have to learn how to be submissive to His plan, because sometimes our plans and God's plans, they work together. And sometimes our plan and God's plan couldn't be further apart. So we have to learn how to put ourselves under His plan and say, okay, God, what is your plan for my life? And if this is your plan for my life, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. And that can be hard, can't it? Because if you're a planner, if you like to plan, if you like to have a goal and you like to see how everything's going to pan out before you ever get there, and then suddenly some of that stuff starts changing and moving and shaking and all things outside of your control, how many of you are like that? You love for stuff to be outside of your control. We're not bred that way, are we? We want to be in charge of everything. Maybe you didn't realize the company just got bought out and now it's changed hands. And now you're wondering, what am I going to do? I was talking with Brian Costin, the president over here at Summit. He was the president over here at Summit. Now it's Bank of the Ozark. And guess what position they don't have? They don't have president for the local branch. And so I'm asking Brian, well, what are you going to do? He said, they were in here this last week. And he said, I'm sitting down with the folks who are going to make the decision. And he said, I just looked at him and say, look, here's what I need. I need to still be able to come to work, and I would appreciate it if I can make the same amount of money. I don't care what title you give me. He said, I can be head janitor. Does not matter what you want me to do. Well, I can only imagine that when Brian got that promotion and he becomes bank over there, president at Summit, everything's great. This is where I'm going to retire. Everything's great. Suddenly he gets a phone call, probably an email. Hey, guess what? We're in negotiations. He may not have even gotten that one. He may have just got the one that said, hey, guess what? Bank of the Ozark is going to own you. And now you're, what I do? Well, he's pretty safe because guess what? There's not in Malvern a Bank of the Ozark. But guess what? If you go right up the road to Benton, exit 117, within 300 yards of each other, there's a Bank of the Ozark and a Summit Bank. Guess what won't be there for long? One of those is going to be gone. I don't know which building, but one of those is going to be gone. And guess what? Computers means you don't need as many people because you're not handwriting anything. So some of those folks are going to be looking for a job. Is this the market you want to be looking for a job in? If the Lord wills, we will live and we will do this or we will do that. It goes on. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills and we live, we'll do this and that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So he's back to these people who are planning without God. They don't understand who they are themselves and they don't understand who God is. And he said, you boast in your arrogance. And he said, all of that is evil. And then he closes it up with verse 17. Therefore, to the one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin. Two roads diverged in a wood. Do you take the plan that includes God, or do you take the plan that excludes God? It could be the same plan. There could be no difference on paper. But if you don't include God, James says it's sin. It could be that you could be the most altruistic person who has ever lived. Your game plan could be to make billions of dollars so you can give it all away. But if you've not included God, James says it's sin. So guys, the goal here is to make goals that include God. And to say, if the Lord wills, we'll live and we'll do this or we'll do that. So that's my question for you. Number one, are you setting goals for yourself? Are you setting goals for your family? Are there things that you're striving for, things that you hope to achieve? Because I think the saddest life that we can live is the life with no goals, with nothing to strive for. I see it every day with my dad now. Dad will be 78 soon. Got up every day of his life and went to work. This last week, well, the last time I was up there, it's probably been 2 or 3 weeks ago now. He had his work boots sitting out, and he was going to just throw them away. Horribly sad for me to see, because my entire life I watched my dad get up every morning, and this was his routine. He would go to the front, he'd go out the back door, and he'd put his feet up on the steps, and he'd tie those Red Wings on, and he used the kind that lace. So he'd strap them up, tie them, and then he'd open the door and say, "Hey, Mom, will you hand me a Diet Coke?" This was every morning. Everett, why didn't you get one before you went outside? Every morning, the same thing. And so it was just sad for me to see Dad getting rid of his work boots. And I said, well, don't get rid of them. You may use them for something. You can go, trouncing around in the mud with them or something. Dad doesn't have a purpose, he doesn't feel like anymore. His body's worn out. He can't get up and go to work like he used to. So there's a lot of days now that I'll call and it'll be 8:30 and Mom will say, well, we just got up. I'm like, you're the laziest people in the world. What happened to all those days when you woke me up at 4:45 in the morning because the school bus was going to run at 7 and I was going to miss it? Hey, what happened to those days? We've got to set goals, and those goals always have to be in front of us because, guys, if you don't have something you're striving for, you will shut down. There's got to be something you want out there. But the key to having something you want out there is that it has to fit inside God's plan for your life. So that's my question. Are you setting goals, and are you including God in those goals? Are you saying, if the Lord wills? And it's much more than lip service, because it's easy for us to say, well, if the Lord wills. Now, this is actively seeking out God's will for your life. Actively seeking out, what does He want me to do? So guys, that's our challenge. Because a real man, a real child of God, makes plans that includes Him. So this week, here's going to be my challenge for you. Sit down and come up with one goal. You may have never done this before. Sit down this week and write one goal for your life. Don't make it a 10-year goal. You can make it a 1-week goal, a 1 month, or 6 months. 6 months from now, this is what I want to have accomplished. Include God in that plan. Actively seek out His face. Ask God, God, is this what you want me to do? When you make that goal, it's not enough just to write out a goal. The next thing you have to do is you have to have an action plan. And an action plan says, this is how I'm going to achieve that goal. A goal without an action plan is just a waste of time on paper. And so now you have to start filling in the gaps underneath it. This is my goal. This is how I'm going to accomplish that goal. But with every step, realize that you're here today and gone tomorrow. And that God is in charge of everything.